The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble steps of Margaret's estate as I pulled into the circular driveway. Every Sunday for the past 18 years, I'd made this drive from Myers Park to Dilworth, and every Sunday my aunt would be waiting on her wraparound porch with coffee and whatever wisdom the week had brought her. "Nathan, darling, you look tired," she said, rising from her wicker chair with more effort than usual. At 78, Margaret Whitfield still carried herself like the textile heiress she was, but I'd noticed the subtle changes over the past few months. "Long week closing the Meridian Plaza deal," I replied, kissing her cheek. $2.3 million in commercial space. Should keep us busy through next quarter. "And Lauren? The boys?" I paused, coffee cup halfway to my lips. That question used to be perfunctory, but lately there was something sharper in Margaret's voice when she asked about my wife. "Lauren's swamped with the Henderson renovation. You know how demanding those Ballantine clients can be. The twins are good. Lacrosse season starts next month, and they're both maintaining their GPAs for college scouts." Margaret nodded slowly, her keen blue eyes studying my face. "She's missed the last 3 Sunday dinners." "Work," I said automatically. "The interior design business is really taking off for her. More evening consultations, weekend property visits. Success comes with a price, you know?" "Indeed it does." Margaret's tone carried an edge I couldn't quite place. "Nathan, walk with me through the garden. I want to show you something." We strolled between the meticulously maintained hedgerows that had been her pride for decades. Margaret moved slower now, but her mind remained razor-sharp, something that had served her well in building and maintaining an $8 million fortune. "Do you remember when you were 12 and caught your mother's boyfriend stealing from her jewelry box?" The memory hit me unexpectedly. "Tommy Morrison. Mom refused to believe me until you hired someone to prove it." "What did I tell you then?" "That people show you who they are through their actions, not their words. And that family protects family, no matter what it costs." Margaret stopped beside her prized rose bushes, their winter dormancy a stark reminder of the season's reality. "I've lived through 3 generations of Charlotte society marriages, Nathan. I've watched affairs destroy the Blackwell family fortune, seen the Hendersons lose everything in their divorce battle, witnessed the Carmichael scandal tear apart one of the city's oldest bloodlines. Aunt Margaret, what are you trying to tell me?" She turned to face me fully, and I saw something in her expression that made my stomach clench. "I'm telling you that I love you like the son I never had, and I'm telling you to pay attention to what's happening in your own house." The drive home felt longer than usual. Margaret's words echoed in my mind as I pulled into our circular driveway, taking in the pristine landscaping and the stately colonial that had been our dream house 8 years ago. Inside, Lauren was arranging flowers in the kitchen, her blonde hair pulled back in a way that highlighted the subtle highlights I hadn't remembered her getting. She looked up as I entered, her smile bright, but somehow practiced. "How's Margaret?" she asked, returning to the roses with careful precision. "Concerned about you missing dinner again." Lauren's hands stilled for just a moment. "I told you, the Garrison project is on a crazy timeline. Mrs. Garrison wants the entire first floor redesigned before their anniversary party in March. Maybe you could call her next week. Margaret looks forward to seeing you." "Of course. I'll make sure to clear my schedule." She turned to face me, and I noticed she was wearing the diamond tennis bracelet I'd given her for our anniversary. "Actually, I have good news. The business is expanding faster than I expected. I need to set up some additional accounts for client payments and project management." "That's great, honey. Whatever you need." "I might need you to sign some paperwork. Partnership tax stuff, business accounting structures." "Richard Blackwood. You remember the investment banker from the club? He's been helping me understand the financial aspects." The name meant nothing to me at the time, but something about the way she said it made me pause. "Richard Blackwood?" "From the country club. Divorced last year?" "He specializes in small business financial planning. Very professional, comes highly recommended." I nodded, though I couldn't place the face. Sure, whatever you need for the business. Later that evening, as Lauren worked on her laptop in the living room, I found myself studying her from the kitchen doorway. She was completely absorbed in whatever she was typing, occasionally checking her phone and smiling at messages that made her laugh softly. Work email? I asked. She looked up, startled. Client consultation follow-ups. Mrs. Patterson is being incredibly demanding about fabric selections. But her laptop screen had been angled away from me, and I'd caught a glimpse of what looked like a messaging app, not email. That night, as Lauren slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and thought about Margaret's words. Family protects family. But how do you protect against something you can't see? The next morning brought a return to routine. Lauren left early for a client meeting, the twins caught their ride to school, and I headed to the office to tackle the week's property showings. But Margaret's voice followed me through every appointment, every phone call, every handshake. It was Thursday before I saw Lauren for more than a few minutes at a time. She'd been working late every night, coming home after I was already in bed, leaving before I woke up. When I mentioned it over coffee, she laughed and blamed it on the demanding schedule of wealthy clients. This is what we've worked toward, Nathan. The high-end market, the social connections, the financial security. Sometimes that means sacrificing time together for the bigger picture. I know. I just miss spending time with my wife. She leaned over and kissed my cheek, her perfume carrying a scent I didn't recognize. Once this busy season passes, things will settle down, I promise. But as I watched her gather her purse and phone, checking messages with that same small smile I'd noticed earlier, I realized I couldn't remember the last time we'd had a real conversation about anything other than schedules and logistics. That Sunday, Margaret was waiting with her usual coffee and a manila folder I didn't recognize. How's the business expansion going? She asked without preamble. Lauren's killing herself with work. Earlier mornings, later nights, weekend consultations. But the money's good, and she's building a solid client base in the high-end market. And this investment banker she's working with? I paused. I hadn't mentioned Richard Blackwood to Margaret. How did you? Charlotte's a small town for people like us, Nathan, especially when it comes to wealthy divorced men and married women. The implication hit me like cold water. Margaret, you can't be suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm observing, and I'm telling you to observe too. She opened the manila folder and handed me a single photograph. It showed Lauren walking into an upscale restaurant downtown, but she wasn't alone. A well-dressed man had his hand on the small of her back, guiding her toward the entrance. Who took this? Someone who cares about you. Someone who's been watching when you couldn't. I studied the photo more carefully. The man was tall, silver-haired, expensive suit. Definitely older than Lauren, definitely comfortable with money, and definitely touching my wife in a way that seemed far too familiar. When was this taken? Last Tuesday, the same evening Lauren told you she was meeting with Mrs. Patterson about fabric selections. My hands shook as I set the photograph on the table. This could be innocent. Business dinner, client introduction. Look at her body language, Nathan. Look at how she's leaning into him. I looked, and what I saw made my stomach turn. Lauren was smiling up at the man with an expression I hadn't seen in months. Her hand was resting on his arm, her posture relaxed and intimate. Who is he? Richard Blackwood. 48 years old, divorced. 18 months ago from Helen Blackwood. Remember the Blackwood textile merger from the 90s? Investment banker, specializes in wealth management for high net worth individuals. Lives in a $3.5 million estate on Lake Norman. Margaret recited the information like she was reading from a dossier, which made me wonder exactly how much she knew and how she'd learned it. Aunt Margaret, what aren't you telling me? She was quiet for a long moment, her hands folded in her lap as she gazed out over the garden. Nathan, I've watched Lauren carefully over the past several months. The late nights, the new clothes, the separate phone calls, the way she lights up when certain messages come through. I've seen this pattern before. You're talking about an affair. I'm talking about a woman who's made choices. And I'm talking about a man who needs to protect himself and his children before those choices destroy everything he's built. I wanted to argue, to defend Lauren, to insist that 18 years of marriage meant something. But the photograph on the table told a different story, and Margaret's track record for reading people was flawless. What do you want me to do? For now? Nothing. Watch. Listen. Pay attention to patterns, and trust that the people who love you most will help you when the time comes. That week passed in a blur of forced normalcy. I found myself analyzing every conversation with Lauren, looking for tells and inconsistencies. The business expansion story started to feel rehearsed. Her explanations for late nights became more elaborate. And twice I caught her stepping outside to take phone calls she claimed were work-related. Friday evening, Lauren announced she'd be spending Saturday at a client's lake house, reviewing renovation plans and making final selections for a rush project. Which client? I asked. The Andersons. You don't know them. New money, tech industry. They want to completely transform their lake house before summer. On Lake Norman? Lake Wiley, she said quickly. The Anderson place is gorgeous, right on the water. Might be a late night. They're having me stay for dinner to discuss budget parameters. But something about her answer felt wrong. The details were too specific, like a story she'd practiced. And Lake Norman had been mentioned in Margaret's description of Richard Blackwood's estate. Saturday morning, I told Lauren I had property showing scheduled and watched her drive away in her Audi. Then I called Margaret. She's gone to Lake Norman, isn't she? My aunt said, without preamble. How did you know I was going to call? Because you're finally listening. And because the investigation I commissioned is providing real-time updates. Investigation. Nathan, darling, it's time we had a more serious conversation. Can you come over? The drive to Margaret's felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life. When I arrived, she was waiting with coffee and a much thicker folder. Sit down, she said gently. What I'm about to show you will change everything. The folder contained dozens of photographs spanning several months. Lauren and Richard Blackwood entering hotels. Walking hand in hand through the gardens at his estate. Kissing in the parking lot of an expensive restaurant. Boarding a sailboat together at Lake Norman. How long? I managed to ask. The affair started 8 months ago. The professional investigation began 3 months ago. Professional investigation? Phillips Investigative Services. Daniel Phillips is former Charlotte Mecklenburg Police, 15 years in private practice. I hired him in March when Lauren's behavior changes became too obvious to ignore. I flipped through photograph after photograph, each one destroying another piece of the life I thought I knew. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I needed complete documentation. This isn't just about an affair, Nathan. It's about financial planning, asset protection, and a very sophisticated exit strategy. Margaret opened a second folder containing bank statements, credit card records, and financial transaction reports. Over the past 8 months, Lauren has transferred $180,000 from your joint accounts to separate business accounts. She's liquidated shared investments, claiming business expansion needs. She's met with divorce attorney Patricia Lawson twice in the past month. The numbers on the pages blurred as I tried to process the scope of the deception. She's planning to leave. She's planning to leave with half of everything you've built, plus the additional assets she's already moved. Richard Blackwood has been providing financial advice on asset protection strategies. According to the investigation, Lauren intends to file for divorce immediately after the holidays. The holidays are 3 weeks away, which means you have 3 weeks to protect yourself, your children, and your future. I set the folders aside and buried my head in my hands. 18 years of marriage, reduced to surveillance photographs and financial records. What do I do now? Now you understand that love and loyalty run deeper than marriage vows. Family protects family, Nathan, and I'm about to show you how. Margaret spent the next 2 hours walking me through every detail of the investigation. Richard Blackwood had a history of affairs with married women, including 2 previous instances that had resulted in expensive divorce settlements for his partners. Lauren had been researching property values and potential sale timelines for our house. Most damaging of all, she'd been modifying beneficiaries on her life insurance policies and had been pressuring me to change mine. She's not just planning to leave, Margaret explained. She's planning to maximize the financial impact of the divorce. The timing after holidays ensures maximum disruption for you and the boys. The asset transfers ensure she keeps money that should be marital property. And the insurance changes protect her while leaving you vulnerable. I can't believe this is happening. Believe it. But also believe that you're not powerless. The investigation has given us 8 months of documentation that any divorce attorney would consider a goldmine. We know her strategy, her timeline, her financial moves. Most importantly, we know about Richard's involvement, which opens up additional legal options. Additional legal options? Margaret smiled, and for the first time that day, it wasn't a sad smile. North Carolina is one of the few states that still recognizes alienation of affection lawsuits. If someone intentionally interferes with a marriage and causes the breakdown of that marriage, they can be held financially liable for the damages. You're talking about suing Richard Blackwood. I'm talking about making sure that the people who destroy marriages face consequences for their actions. Richard Blackwood has a $3.5 million net worth and a reputation in Charlotte's financial community. An alienation of affection lawsuit would destroy both. The drive home that evening felt surreal. Lauren's car was already in the driveway, and lights were on throughout the house. I sat in my car for several minutes, staring at the home we'd built together, trying to reconcile the woman inside with the woman in the surveillance photographs. "How was the lake house?" I asked as I entered the kitchen. Lauren looked up from her laptop, her smile automatic and practiced. "Exhausting but productive. The Andersons have expensive taste but unlimited budget, so it should be a very profitable project." "Lake Wiley's beautiful this time of year." "Oh yes, gorgeous views. The fall colors reflecting off the water." She closed her laptop and stood up, stretching. "I'm exhausted. Long day of measuring rooms and reviewing fabric samples." But there were no fabric samples in her car. Her clothes didn't smell like construction dust or paint fumes. And Lake Wiley was 40 minutes in the opposite direction from Lake Norman. "I'm glad the business is doing so well," I said carefully. "Richard's financial advice has been invaluable. He really understands the luxury market dynamics." The casual way she said his name, like he was just another business contact, instead of the man she'd been having an affair with for 8 months, made my chest tighten. "Maybe I should meet him sometime. Thank him for helping you." Lauren's pause was so brief, I might have missed it before Margaret's warnings. "Oh, you'd find him boring. All numbers and spreadsheets. Very dry personality." But the woman in the photographs hadn't looked bored. She'd looked radiant. That night, I lay awake listening to Lauren's breathing and trying to figure out how I'd missed the signs for so long. The late nights I'd attributed to business success. The new clothes I'd assumed were professional wardrobe upgrades. The separate phone calls I'd thought were client consultations. The distracted conversations I'd blamed on work stress. How long had she been lying to my face while planning my destruction? Sunday morning brought the twins thundering down the stairs, arguing about lacrosse equipment and college application deadlines. At 16, Caleb and Dylan were focused on their own lives, but I found myself studying their interactions with Lauren, looking for signs they'd noticed changes. "Mom, can you drive us to practice?" Caleb asked. "Dad's car smells like coffee and old leather." "Can't today, sweetheart. I have a client emergency. Pipe burst in the Henderson house. and we need to assess water damage before the insurance adjuster arrives. Another lie, delivered so smoothly that even I might have believed it if I hadn't known better. I'll drive them, I said. No problem. As I loaded lacrosse gear into my car, Dylan paused. Dad, is everything okay with Mom lately? She seems, I don't know, different. Different how? Just distracted, like she's thinking about something else all the time, and she's been working a lot more nights. Even the twins had noticed. She's building the business, son. Sometimes that requires sacrifice. Yeah, I guess. Just seems like she used to be around more. The drive to lacrosse practice was filled with normal teenage chatter about school, friends, and college prospects. But underneath their casual conversation, I heard what Dylan had noticed. Lauren's absence from their daily lives had become the new normal. Margaret was waiting with coffee and another folder when I arrived at her house. The boys are asking questions, I told her. Smart boys. They're noticing what you've been too trusting to see. She opened the latest folder. Phillips provided this week's update. Lauren and Richard spent yesterday afternoon at his estate, not at any lake house or client emergency. More photographs. Lauren and Richard on the deck of his lake house, glasses of wine in hand, her head resting on his shoulder as they watched the sunset. The intimacy in their body language was undeniable. She lied directly to my face about where she was going. She's been lying to your face for 8 months. The question is what you're going to do about it. What are my options? Margaret opened a business card from the folder. Thomas Bradley. He's the most aggressive divorce attorney in Charlotte, and he specializes in high-asset cases with complex financial disputes. I've already spoken with him about your situation. You've already spoken with him? Nathan, I've been protecting this family's interest for 78 years. I'm not going to stop now. Margaret's voice carried steel. Bradley reviewed the preliminary evidence and said it's the most comprehensive documentation he's seen in a matrimonial case. With this level of proof, he's confident he can protect your assets, secure primary custody, and make Lauren's divorce strategy backfire spectacularly. Primary custody? Lauren's affair demonstrates a pattern of deception and poor judgment. Combined with her increasing absence from the boys' daily lives, any family court judge would question her fitness as a primary parent. The affair partner's involvement in financial planning also suggests collusion in marital asset dissipation. Margaret spoke like she'd been consulting attorneys for weeks, which made me realize how long she'd been planning this conversation. You want me to file first? I want you to file strategically. Lauren plans to file after the holidays for maximum emotional and financial impact. If you file first, with comprehensive evidence, you control the narrative and the legal strategy. This will destroy her. She destroyed herself, and she's planning to destroy you. The only question is whether you're going to let her. I spent the rest of that afternoon at Margaret's, reviewing every detail of the investigation and learning exactly how sophisticated Lauren's deception had become. Richard Blackwood wasn't just her affair partner. He was her financial advisor in planning the optimal strategy for leaving the marriage with maximum assets. The evidence was overwhelming. 8 months of surveillance photographs documenting their relationship. Financial records showing systematic asset transfers. Credit card statements revealing expensive gifts and luxury hotel charges. Even recorded phone conversations where Lauren discussed divorce timing with Richard. How did Phillips get recorded conversations? Lauren's been conducting personal calls from her office. Phillips installed monitoring equipment during a routine maintenance visit. Everything was legal. She has no reasonable expectation of privacy in a business location. The recordings were devastating. Lauren and Richard discussing which assets would be easiest to hide. Conversations about optimal timing for divorce filing. Even planning post-divorce living arrangements and vacations. She's been planning this for months, I said. She's been planning this from the beginning of the affair. Richard's involvement suggests this wasn't an emotional decision. It was a calculated financial strategy. That evening, I returned home to find Lauren in the kitchen, preparing dinner with unusual enthusiasm. She'd changed clothes since morning, wearing a dress I didn't recognize, and jewelry that seemed too expensive for a day of client meetings. "How was your emergency consultation?" I asked. "Overwhelming. The water damage was worse than we thought. They'll need to replace flooring throughout the first floor. But the insurance should cover most of it, so the Hendersons are actually talking about upgrading to higher-end materials." She delivered the lie with perfect sincerity, complete with specific details that made it sound credible. If I hadn't seen photographs of her spending the afternoon with Richard Blackwood, I would have believed every word. Sounds like a good opportunity for the business. Richard thinks it could lead to several more referrals in that neighborhood. High net worth clients tend to recommend each other. The casual mention of Richard's opinion, like he was a normal part of her business discussions, made my jaw clench. But I managed to nod and change the subject to the twins' lacrosse season. Dinner conversation felt like performance art. Lauren asking about my day, sharing stories about client meetings that had never happened, discussing plans for Thanksgiving that she apparently had no intention of attending as my wife. The twins chatted about school and friends, completely unaware that their mother was planning to tear their family apart in 3 weeks. After dinner, Lauren excused herself to return calls and work on project proposals. I helped the twins with homework, then found myself standing outside Lauren's office door, listening to her side of a phone conversation. "Thursday works better than Wednesday," she was saying. "The boys have practice until 6, so we'd have the evening." "No, Nathan usually works late on Thursdays, property management meetings." She was scheduling time with Richard around my schedule and the twins' activities, planning their affair around our family routines. Yes, I spoke with Patricia again. She thinks we should wait until after New Year's. Maximum impact for custody considerations, and it gives us time to finalize the asset protection strategies. Patricia, the divorce attorney Margaret had mentioned. Lauren was discussing timing for divorce filing with her affair partner, treating the destruction of our marriage like a business transaction. "I love you too," she said softly. "I can't wait until we don't have to sneak around anymore." I walked away before I heard more. The casual affection in her voice when talking to Richard was more painful than the photographs had been. This wasn't just physical attraction or midlife crisis. She was emotionally invested in destroying our family. That night, Lauren came to bed acting like the loving wife she'd pretended to be for 8 months. She cuddled against me, stroking my chest and murmuring about how tired she was from her demanding day. The performance was so convincing that I almost forgot about the photographs in Margaret's folder. "Nathan, I love you," she whispered as she drifted off to sleep. But 3 hours earlier, she'd said the same words to Richard Blackwood. The next morning brought new revelations. Lauren left early for another client meeting, but this time I was ready. Margaret had given me Philip's direct number, and I called as soon as Lauren's car disappeared. "Mrs. Whitfield said you might contact me," Philip said. "Your wife just arrived at Blackwood's office building. They're meeting for breakfast at the restaurant on the first floor." "How long have you been following her this morning?" "Since 6:30. She drove directly from your house to downtown Charlotte. No stops, no actual client meetings." Another lie. Lauren had told me she was meeting the Patterson family at their home in Ballantyne to finalize kitchen renovation plans. "Mr. Brooks, I need to ask, how much of the evidence has Mrs. Whitfield shared with you?" "Everything, I think. Photographs, financial records, recorded conversations." "Then you understand this isn't a simple affair case. Your wife and her partner have been planning a coordinated financial assault on your marriage. The level of sophistication suggests they've done this before." Meaning? Meaning Richard Blackwood has a pattern. This is his third documented affair with a married woman, and both previous cases resulted in divorces where his partners received unusually large settlements. He's essentially running a business. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Lauren wasn't just cheating. She was part of a systematic scheme to destroy marriages and steal assets. What do you recommend? Meet with your attorney immediately. File first, file fast, and file with everything we've documented. Don't give them time to adjust their strategy. That afternoon, I sat in Thomas Bradley's law office, reviewing 8 months of evidence that painted Lauren as a calculating stranger rather than the woman I'd married. "This is extraordinary documentation," Bradley said, flipping through surveillance photographs. "Most affair cases rely on suspicion and circumstantial evidence. You have comprehensive proof of adultery, asset dissipation, and financial conspiracy. What are my options?" "Multiple strategies. We file for divorce immediately, seeking primary custody and asset protection based on Lauren's affair and financial misconduct. Simultaneously, we file an alienation of affection lawsuit against Blackwood, seeking damages for his intentional interference with your marriage." Bradley explained that North Carolina's alienation of affection law allowed for substantial financial judgments against third parties who deliberately destroyed marriages. With Blackwood's wealth and pattern of behavior, the potential damages could reach into the millions. "This will be very public," Bradley warned. "Alienation of affection cases attract media attention, especially when they involve wealthy defendants and systematic patterns of behavior." "Will that hurt Lauren's business?" "It will destroy Lauren's business. High-end interior design depends on reputation and social connections. When her affairs and financial schemes become public knowledge, her client base will evaporate overnight." I thought about the twins, about their friends' families, about our social circle learning the truth about Lauren's double life. "Is there a way to handle this quietly?" "Not if you want maximum protection. Lauren has been planning a public, devastating divorce designed to destroy your reputation and steal your assets. The only effective response is to strike first with overwhelming evidence." I left Bradley's office with a timeline for filing that would give Lauren no opportunity to adjust her strategy. Divorce papers would be served within 48 hours, along with asset freeze orders that would prevent any further financial transfers. The alienation of affection lawsuit against Richard Blackwood would follow within a week. "One more thing," Bradley said as I gathered the evidence folders. "Your aunt mentioned that she's been funding the investigation and will be covering legal costs. That's an unusual arrangement." "Aunt Margaret believes in protecting family. Family loyalty like that is rare. You're fortunate to have someone willing to fight for your interests." That evening, Lauren came home with shopping bags from expensive boutiques, claiming she'd been purchasing samples and materials for client presentations. But the bags contained personal items, designer dresses, jewelry, perfume that cost more than most people's mortgage payments. "Richard thinks presentation is crucial in the luxury market," she explained. "Clients need to see that their designer has taste and style." More casual mentions of Richard's opinions, as if his input on her appearance was normal business advice rather than direction from her affair partner on how to dress for their relationship. "How's the business expansion going?" I asked. "Incredibly well. Richard's connections have opened doors I never imagined. I think we're looking at doubling revenue next year." But Lauren's business expansion was a fiction. According to Phillips's investigation, she'd been losing clients rather than gaining them, spending more time with Richard than on actual work. The additional accounts she'd mentioned were vehicles for hiding marital assets, not legitimate business growth. "That's wonderful, honey. You've worked so hard for this success." "Sometimes I feel guilty about how much time I'm spending away from you and the boys," she said, and for a moment her expression seemed genuinely conflicted. "But this opportunity won't last forever. I need to maximize it while I can." Even her guilt was calculated. Lauren was establishing a narrative of sacrifice and hard work to justify her absences, when the reality was systematic deception and asset theft. After dinner, I helped the twins with homework while Lauren disappeared into her office for more client calls. But this time, I positioned myself where I could see her laptop screen. She wasn't working on design projects. She was researching divorce law, property division strategies, and custody considerations. The woman I'd married had been replaced by a stranger who studied our marriage like a financial transaction she was planning to liquidate. That night, I called Margaret. I met with Bradley. He's filing papers Thursday morning. Good. How are you feeling? Like I don't know the woman I've been living with for 18 years? You don't. The Lauren you married either never existed or disappeared when Richard Blackwood entered the picture. The woman you're living with now is someone else entirely. What happens to the boys when this becomes public? The boys discover that their father protected them from a woman who was willing to destroy their family for money. They learn that integrity matters more than convenience, and that family loyalty runs deeper than marriage vows. Margaret's voice carried absolute conviction, the same tone she'd used when she'd taught me about honor and responsibility as a child. Are you sure about this strategy? Nathan, I've lived through 78 years of watching families rise and fall based on the choices people make. Lauren made her choices 8 months ago. Richard Blackwood made his choices when he decided to systematically destroy marriages for profit. Now you get to make your choices. What choices? Whether to be a victim or a victor. Whether to let them destroy you or destroy them first. Whether to protect what matters or let strangers steal everything you've built. Thursday morning, Lauren left for another fictional client meeting. Phillips confirmed she'd driven to Richard Blackwood's estate for what appeared to be an extended planning session. They were photographed on his deck with legal documents, coffee, and laptop computers, planning my destruction while I prepared theirs. At 10:30, 2 process servers arrived at Richard Blackwood's office building. At 11, another team served Lauren at the Lake Norman estate. At 11:15, my attorney filed asset freeze orders that would prevent any further financial transfers from our joint accounts. At 11:30, Phillips called to report that Lauren had screamed at Richard for 20 minutes before storming out of his house. At noon, she called me. Nathan, there's been some kind of mistake. Someone served me with divorce papers, but they have the wrong information. They claim I've been having an affair and stealing money. Her voice carried perfect confusion and indignation, like she genuinely couldn't understand why anyone would think she was capable of adultery or financial misconduct. Where are you, Lauren? At the Patterson house, working on kitchen revisions. Nathan, this is insane. Someone has completely fabricated evidence against me. But I knew she wasn't at the Patterson house. She was driving back from Richard Blackwood's estate, where they'd been served with lawsuits that would destroy both their lives. We need to talk, I said. Yes, we absolutely need to talk. This is obviously some kind of scheme to frame me for things I haven't done. Even facing comprehensive evidence, Lauren maintained the fiction that she was innocent. The capacity for deception was more complete than I'd imagined possible. Come home. We'll sort this out. I'll be there in an hour. Nathan, I need you to know that whatever those papers say, I love you and I love our family. I would never do anything to hurt you. But for 8 months, she'd been doing nothing except planning to hurt me. Lauren arrived home with red-rimmed eyes and an expression of wounded innocence that might have been convincing if I hadn't seen 8 months of surveillance photographs. She threw herself into my arms, sobbing about false accusations and legal conspiracies designed to destroy our marriage. Show me the papers, I said. She handed me the divorce petition and alienation of affection lawsuit with shaking hands. Nathan, I don't understand any of this. They're claiming I've been having an affair with some investment banker, but I don't even know who Richard Blackwood is. The lie was so audacious that I almost laughed. You don't know Richard Blackwood? I mean, I know the name from business networking, but I've never had any personal relationship with him. This is obviously someone trying to destroy us. I walked to the kitchen counter where I'd left one of Margaret's evidence folders. Lauren, sit down. Nathan, you have to believe me. I know how this looks, but... I opened the folder and spread surveillance photographs across the kitchen table. 8 months of documented evidence. Lauren and Richard entering hotels, walking hand in hand through his estate, kissing in restaurant parking lots, boarding his sailboat together. Lauren stared at the photographs in apparent shock, her mouth opening and closing without sound. "These are fake," she finally whispered. "Someone doctored these photos to frame me." "There are over 600 photographs, Lauren, plus financial records, recorded phone conversations, and credit card statements." I opened the second folder, revealing bank transaction records showing her systematic transfer of marital assets to personal accounts, credit card charges for luxury hotels, expensive gifts, and romantic dinners for two. "This is impossible," she said, but her voice had lost conviction. "Is it impossible? Or is it exactly what you've been planning for 8 months?" Lauren's performance of innocence began to crack. Her eyes darted between the photographs and the financial records, calculating how much evidence existed and whether any defense remained possible. "Nathan, even if some of these photos are real, it's not what you think. Richard has been helping me with business planning. If we've spent time together, it's been purely professional." "Purely professional?" I pulled out transcripts of recorded phone conversations, including the one where she'd told Richard she loved him and couldn't wait until they didn't have to sneak around anymore. Lauren read the transcript in silence, her face cycling through shock, denial, and finally resignation. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "Long enough to protect myself and the boys." "The boys?" She looked up sharply. "Nathan, please don't let this affect the boys. Whatever mistakes I've made, they don't deserve to suffer. The boys deserve a mother who puts their welfare above her own desires. You've been planning to destroy their family for 8 months. I wasn't planning to destroy anything. I was planning to build a new life. By stealing half our assets and disrupting their entire world?" Lauren was quiet for a long moment, staring at the evidence spread across our kitchen table. "What do you want from me?" "I want to understand how the woman I married became someone who could plan my destruction while pretending to love me." "I do love you, Nathan. But I'm in love with Richard. There's a difference." The casual admission, delivered like she was discussing weather, made my chest tighten. "So you decided to steal from me while planning to leave?" "I decided to protect myself financially while transitioning to a new life. Richard helped me understand how divorce law works, how asset division gets determined. I was trying to be smart about the process. You were trying to commit fraud. I was trying to survive. Do you know what it's like to realize you've spent 18 years in the wrong marriage? To finally find someone who makes you feel alive again?" Lauren's voice carried a passion I hadn't heard in years, but it was directed toward Richard Blackwood rather than our marriage or family. "So you decided to lie and steal rather than have an honest conversation about our problems?" "What conversation?" "Nathan, we've been roommates for 5 years. We share logistics and parenting duties, but when was the last time we had a real conversation about our dreams, our passions, our futures?" Her criticism stung because it contained truth. Our marriage had become comfortable routine rather than intimate partnership. But comfort wasn't justification for betrayal. "If you were unhappy, we could have tried counseling, trial separation, honest discussion about our problems. I tried to get your attention for years. You were always focused on the business, the boys' activities, Margaret's needs. When was the last time you asked what I wanted out of life? When was the last time you told me? When was the last time you initiated a conversation about anything other than schedules and logistics?" We stared at each other across the kitchen table, 18 years of accumulated resentments and unmet needs suddenly visible. "This doesn't justify what you've done," I said finally. "I know, but it explains it." Lauren's voice was quiet now, stripped of defensiveness. "Richard made me feel like I mattered again. Like my thoughts and dreams were important. Like I was more than just someone who managed your household and raised your children. Our children, Lauren. And this is their home too. I never meant to hurt the boys. You were planning to disrupt their entire lives without warning, steal half their college funds, and move them to a different school district to live with a man they've never met. Lauren's face crumpled. Richard has a wonderful relationship with his own children. He would have been good to Caleb and Dylan. Richard has a history of destroying marriages for profit. According to the investigation, this is his third affair with a married woman. Both previous cases resulted in divorces where his partners received unusually large settlements. That's not true. It's completely true. You weren't his first victim, Lauren. You were his latest mark in a pattern of systematic marriage destruction. I showed her Phillips's background investigation on Richard Blackwood, documenting his previous affairs and their financial outcomes. Lauren read in silence, her face growing pale as she realized the scope of her manipulation. He told me I was special, she whispered. You were profitable, just like the others. Lauren sat in stunned silence, processing the evidence that she'd been used as much as she'd been using me. What happens now? She asked finally. Now you face consequences for your choices. The divorce will proceed, but instead of your carefully planned asset theft, you'll be dealing with documented evidence of adultery and financial misconduct. Instead of primary custody, you'll be explaining to family court why you prioritized an affair over your children's welfare. And Richard? Richard faces an alienation of affection lawsuit that will destroy his reputation and cost him millions. The pattern of systematic marriage destruction makes him an ideal defendant for teaching other predators that actions have consequences. Lauren nodded slowly, understanding finally penetrating her self-deception. I've lost everything, haven't I? You've lost what you chose to throw away. The question is what you're going to do with what remains. What do you mean? I mean the boys still need a mother, even if they can't live with you full-time. I mean you can choose to handle this divorce with dignity instead of making it more destructive than it already is. I mean you can take responsibility for your choices instead of continuing to blame everyone else. Lauren looked around our kitchen, taking in the family photos and school artwork that documented 18 years of shared life. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far. The question is whether you're going to keep making it worse. That evening, Lauren packed bags for a hotel stay while I explained the situation to Caleb and Dylan. The conversation was the hardest thing I'd ever done, watching my 16-year-old sons process their mother's betrayal and our family's destruction. Are you and Mom getting divorced? Caleb asked. Yes. Your mother has been having an affair and she's been planning to leave for several months. With who? Dylan wanted to know. A man named Richard Blackwood. He's an investment banker who's been helping your mother plan the divorce. Both boys absorbed this information with the resilience of teenagers who'd grown up in a household where conflict was rare and emotional drama was minimal. Where will we live? Caleb asked. Here, with me. Your mother will have visitation rights, but this will remain your primary home. What about college? Dylan's priorities were practical. College plans don't change. Your education is still the top priority, and there's money set aside for both of you. Is Mom going to marry this other guy? Caleb's question carried more curiosity than judgment. I don't know what Mom's plans are. That's something you'll need to discuss with her. That night, after Lauren left for her hotel, I sat in our empty bedroom trying to process the complete collapse of everything I'd thought was permanent. 18 years of marriage, reduced to legal documents and custody arrangements. Margaret called around 9 o'clock. How are you holding up? Like someone hit me with a truck. Even knowing it was coming, actually going through it is surreal. The hardest part is over. Everything from here forward is just logistics and legal procedures. The boys are handling it better than I expected. Strong boys with good values. They'll be fine. How is Lauren adjusting to reality? She's shocked that Richard was using her, angry about the evidence, and scared about the financial consequences. But she's still not taking full responsibility for her choices. Some people never do. The important thing is that you and the boys are protected now. Margaret, I need to thank you. If you hadn't investigated this situation, I would have been completely blindsided. Family protects family, Nathan. It's what we do. 2 weeks later, Richard Blackwood's attorney contacted Bradley to discuss settlement negotiations for the alienation of affection lawsuit. The media attention had been devastating for his investment business, with several major clients terminating their relationships due to the publicity surrounding his systematic destruction of marriages. He's offering $2 million to settle, Bradley reported. His attorney claims the publicity has already cost him more than the marriage was worth. What do you recommend? Take it. $2 million is substantial punishment, and continued litigation would be expensive and time-consuming. More importantly, the public documentation of his pattern ensures he won't be able to prey on other families. The divorce settlement was finalized 3 months later. Lauren received an equitable share of marital assets, but the evidence of financial misconduct and adultery limited her claims significantly. She lost primary custody of the boys, received minimal alimony, and faced professional and social consequences that effectively ended her interior design business in Charlotte. Richard Blackwood paid the $2 million settlement and relocated his business to another state after losing most of his Charlotte client base. The case became a cautionary tale in local legal and social circles about the financial risks of alienation of affection lawsuits. Lauren moved to Atlanta, where she eventually found work with a corporate design firm. Her relationship with Richard didn't survive the legal and financial consequences of their affair. The boys visited her occasionally, but their relationship remained distant and formal. 1 year after the divorce was finalized, I was settling into new routines when Margaret called with unexpected news. Nathan, I need to tell you something about my health. Are you feeling all right? I'm dying, darling. Pancreatic cancer. The doctors think I have 3 to 6 months. The words hit me like cold water. Margaret, why didn't you tell me sooner? Because there was nothing you could do, and we had more important things to focus on. But now that your situation is resolved, we need to discuss some practical matters. Margaret spent the next hour explaining her estate planning and final wishes. As her primary heir, I would inherit most of her fortune, including the real estate portfolio, investment accounts, and the family mansion. The responsibility was overwhelming. Why me? I asked. Because you're the one who carries forward the family values. Honor, loyalty, protection of those we love. Because you've proven that when tested, you make the right choices even when they're difficult. What about the investigation costs, the legal fees? You spent a fortune protecting me. The best money I ever spent. Family protects family, Nathan. That's what money is for. Margaret passed away 6 months later, surrounded by family and leaving behind a legacy of wisdom, strength, and uncompromising loyalty. Her funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives she'd touched over 7 decades of community involvement. In her final letter to me, she wrote, "The investigation was my last gift to you, but not my most important one. My most important gift was teaching you that love without boundaries enables destruction, while love with wisdom protects what matters most. Use these lessons to build something better than what was torn down." 2 years after the divorce, I met Emma Richardson at a charity fundraiser Margaret had supported. Emma was a pediatric nurse who volunteered with children's advocacy organizations, and her approach to life was everything Lauren's had not been: honest, selfless, focused on building rather than acquiring. Our relationship developed slowly, built on shared values and genuine compatibility rather than physical attraction or financial considerations. Emma understood that I came with complicated history and teenage sons who needed stability more than they needed a replacement mother. "I'm not trying to replace their mother," she told me after we'd been dating for 8 months. "I'm trying to add value to their lives and yours without erasing what came before." Emma's wisdom and patience won over Caleb and Dylan gradually. She attended their lacrosse games, helped with college applications, and created new family traditions that honored our past while building toward our future. We married 3 years after Margaret's death, in a small ceremony attended by close friends and family. The boys, now in college, served as my best men. Lauren sent a card congratulating us, which was more graciousness than I'd expected given our history. Our wedding reception was held at Margaret's estate, which I'd converted into a community center and scholarship foundation in her honor. The textile museum she'd always dreamed of became reality, funded by her estate and supporting educational programs for young people interested in business and financial literacy. 5 years after the divorce, Brooks Development had grown into one of Charlotte's most successful real estate companies, employing 75 people and specializing in commercial and residential projects that strengthened community development. The financial settlement from Richard Blackwood had provided startup capital for expansion, turning the consequences of his marriage destruction into tools for building something positive. Caleb graduated from Duke with a business degree and joined the company, bringing fresh energy and modern technology to our traditional approaches. Dylan completed medical school and returned to Charlotte for his residency at Presbyterian Hospital, continuing the family tradition of community service. Lauren remarried in Atlanta to a corporate executive who appreciated her professional skills without the complicated history of her affair with Richard. Our interactions remained cordial but distant, focused on the boys' major life events and practical matters rather than personal relationship. Emma and I built a marriage based on the lessons Margaret had taught me about protecting what matters most. Open communication replaced comfortable silence. Shared goals replaced parallel lives. Active love replaced passive assumption. "Do you ever regret how everything happened?" Emma asked one evening as we walked through Margaret's gardens, now open to the public as part of the community center. "I regret that it had to happen. I regret that the boys lost the security of an intact family, but I don't regret discovering the truth or protecting our future." "Do you think Lauren regrets her choices?" "I think Lauren regrets the consequences, but I'm not sure she regrets the choices. She got what she wanted, freedom from a marriage that had become routine. She just didn't expect the price to be so high." "And Richard?" "Richard learned that systematic marriage destruction is an expensive hobby when your victims have resources to fight back." The alienation of affection case had become a landmark precedent in North Carolina family law, demonstrating that third parties who deliberately interfere with marriages face serious financial consequences. Several subsequent cases cited our documentation as the standard for proving intentional interference. Phillips Investigative Services became the premier matrimonial investigation firm in the Charlotte region, with families throughout the Carolinas requesting the same comprehensive surveillance and evidence gathering that had protected our family. Daniel Phillips often referred to our case as an example of how professional investigation could prevent financial devastation. Margaret's Community Center hosted annual workshops on financial literacy and marriage protection, teaching young couples about communication, conflict resolution, and legal safeguards for protecting assets and children. The programs were popular with engaged couples and newlyweds who wanted to build marriages that could withstand life's inevitable challenges. "Your aunt would be proud," Emma said, as we watched teenagers participating in a leadership development program funded by Margaret's Foundation. "She'd be satisfied," I corrected. "Margaret didn't seek pride. She sought results. Family protected, community strengthened, values transmitted to the next generation." "Do you think she planned all of this? The investigation, the evidence, the way everything worked out?" "I think Margaret understood that knowledge is power, preparation prevents disaster, and family loyalty transcends individual convenience. The rest was just strategic thinking applied to protecting people she loved." On the 10th anniversary of Margaret's death, I stood in the textile museum she'd envisioned, surrounded by photographs and artifacts documenting 4 generations of family history. The boys, now successful adults with families of their own, gathered with Emma and me to honor the woman who'd saved our family through her final gift. Great Aunt Margaret never met our children, Caleb said, watching his 3-year-old daughter explore the museum's interactive exhibits. But they're growing up with the security she protected for us. She knew that family legacy extends beyond individual relationships, Dylan added. The choices she made affected generations she'd never meet. Emma squeezed my hand as I read aloud from Margaret's final letter. Some gifts transcend death. Truth transcends deception. Love with wisdom transcends love without boundaries. Use these lessons to build something better than what was torn down. Did you ever imagine your life would turn out this way? Emma asked as we drove home that evening. 10 years ago, I thought I knew what my life was going to be. Comfortable marriage, successful business, children who grew up secure and confident. It never occurred to me that someone I trusted completely was planning to destroy everything I valued. But you rebuilt something stronger. We rebuilt something stronger. Margaret protected me from total destruction, but she couldn't rebuild my life. That took years of conscious effort, learning to trust again, figuring out how to create authentic intimacy instead of comfortable routine. Do you think Lauren learned those lessons? I hope so, for her sake and for the boys' sake, but that's not my responsibility anymore. Emma nodded, understanding the boundaries that had taken years to establish. Lauren was the boys' mother and would always be part of our extended family through that connection. But she was no longer part of my emotional life or daily concerns. Margaret's real gift wasn't the investigation, I said, as we pulled into our driveway. Her real gift was teaching me that love without wisdom is dangerous, that family loyalty is worth fighting for, and that sometimes protecting the people you care about requires making difficult choices. Even when those choices hurt people you once loved? Especially then. Lauren's affair would have destroyed our family financially and emotionally if Margaret hadn't intervened. The boys would have grown up thinking deception and manipulation were normal relationship strategies. I would have spent years recovering from financial devastation while trying to rebuild my reputation and business. Instead, they grew up learning that actions have consequences, that family protects family, and that integrity matters more than convenience. Exactly. Margaret's investigation gave us truth. What we did with that truth was our choice. That night, as Emma slept beside me, I thought about the anniversary of discoveries that had changed everything. 10 years ago, I'd learned that the woman I'd trusted completely was a stranger planning my destruction. I'd learned that family loyalty could transcend death, that professional investigation could protect against systematic deception, and that North Carolina law provided remedies for marriage destruction that few people knew existed. Most importantly, I'd learned that some betrayals, while devastating, create opportunities for building something better than what was lost. Lauren's affair had been the end of comfortable illusion, but the beginning of authentic understanding. Richard Blackwood's manipulation had cost him millions and taught Charlotte's social community that marriage destruction carried serious financial risks. Margaret's investigation had protected our family and become a model for other families facing similar threats. Some gifts transcend death, I whispered, repeating Margaret's words as I had every night for 10 years. In the morning, Emma and I would continue building the life Margaret's wisdom had made possible. The boys would continue building careers and families rooted in the values she'd fought to protect. The community center would continue teaching young people about integrity, loyalty, and the importance of choosing partners who shared their fundamental values. Margaret's final gift had been truth that set us free from deception, but her lasting gift was the knowledge that family love, when combined with wisdom and courage, could overcome any betrayal and build something stronger from the wreckage. The last gift had become the foundation for everything that followed.